Has life ever caught you by surprise? Or maybe your world got turned upside down? Well, you're in luck because today's episode, we're going to talk about when life throws you a curveball, or when it hands you lemons, or when it just pulls the rug out from under you. All of these
Yeah,
things, when life does
yeah.
that. And I'm Randy. That's Danny. This is the Existential Stoic podcast. What's going on, Danny?
What's up, Randy?
Yeah, so this week we both had situations where, the world just kind of reality just smacked us upside the head, like really hard.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
You you know what's funny too? When you did the introduction, I was just thinking, you just reminded me of something. Isn't it funny, like these things happen and like the way we interpret it is that it happened to me rather than it
Mhm.
just happened. Like if there was like, I don't know, there's like a natural disaster. We don't say like it's not like it didn't happen to me, it just happened. So if I happened to be in the way, it was like, natural disaster. I can't do anything about it. But when it's other stuff, we like interpret it as if it's directed at us intentionally, almost, right? Even though I don't know that it always is right to think of it that way. It's kind of funny though. But yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, it's the subjective experience of it. And the crazy thing is that the suffering is just because we're arguing with reality.
Yeah.
Like this
Yeah.
past week, I suffered so insane. Like I had a difficult week, and then there was just one event a few days ago that like took me to like I literally I we were talking last week about how like I was just stressed out and I thought I was going to literally burst. And then at the end of the week, there was just an event that like popped me into the next universe. I literally
It,
like it not I right now reality to me is just like what more could happen? Like
yeah.
yeah.
Isn't it funny? It always seems to happen that way too, where like, it's usually what, or at least for me, in my experience, it's like you're usually already like either tired, worn out, stressed out about something, and then it's like this other thing happens. Like what's that saying? Like bad things come in threes or whatever. It does
Mm,
feel that way sometimes. Like, like it's never just one thing, it's like a wave of things that just like a tsunami that just knocks you over and drags you along the ground for a while and then destroys everything in its path.
yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. And so like, the difficult part is actually like getting through the I think the pain, the suffering, all of that stuff. And I think it can be extraordinarily difficult for younger people because they haven't experienced it as much. For
Yeah,
people
yeah,
without like a support network, without good friends. Because
yeah,
I was fortunate enough to be able to call you up and discuss, and
yeah.
you talk some sense into me.
It helps. No, it does though. It does. It helps a lot to have somebody you can call, have someone to talk to, or even just rely on if you need it, depending on what happens. Like, because things can be, they can mess up your life in different ways, where like sometimes it's just emotional, or like your interpretation of reality. Other times it's like also involves other things that you might need other support. It's fun. I was thinking about this too this week, and I don't know if this will make total sense, but like it's funny when these things happen. Like I think sometimes like we just need to try like because when these things happen, we feel like they happen to us and we tell a story about it, right? Because we're always doing that. We make everything meaningful. We tell stories. And that story always involves like intent and stuff like that. And I think, but it's not really helpful, right? At all. It doesn't help us get past it. It doesn't help us deal with our emotions. It doesn't help us deal with the situation. And I was thinking like it would be so good if we could just like, to the extent possible, try to see positive in it. And like what I mean by that is like, you know, like I'm not gonna get into the whole situation, but like this past week something happened to my partner, and like in the end, I think it was positive because I think she needed to get out of this place she was in and all this stuff. So I think in the end it was positive, but it was still really stressful and difficult. And it wasn't at the time that she, wanted to do it on her own. So it was like not her decision, all that stuff adds up, right? But like trying to see sort of like I guess the silver lining or the sunshine instead of the
Mm.
night is like really helpful because it can help you kind of get perspective on the situation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. That was one thing that helped me as well. Because like this was something that caught me so much by surprise. Like
Yeah,
it
but
was it was in my blindest spot. I would have bet everything that I had that this never would have happened. Like it was my blindest blind spot. I never even thought this would be possible, and it happened. And so like I can only really remember distinctly one other time that I was caught this much by surprise. Like because like I was a Boy Scout. We learned to be prepared, and I'm a naturally, I
Eagle
overthink
Scout,
everything. So
actually.
yeah,
You went through the
Eagle
whole
Scout, yeah,
thing.
yeah,
You
I
were
know, right?
prepared.
Yeah. So like I uh I just like naturally overthink things and prepare for things so that they're not as bad when they happen, I guess. But this was a scenario I never even saw coming. And so it just knocked me so far outside of my bounds. But there were two things. So one, I know that with each failure comes the seed of the equivalent or greater success. So like I knew that even though I was going through intense suffering and pain at the moment, for something this out of the blue to come, I was like, well, there's something enormous that must be coming that I can't even imagine yet. So that's the one thing that got me through. And then the other time I just remember back to, there was an experience where I was working as a relief veterinarian, which is a vet who works at a bunch of different hospitals. And I think I was working at three or four of them at the same time. And I was like, I'm like having a job. I'm set. Like I don't have to worry about it. I got three different places I'm working for. I'll never have to worry about that again. Literally 1 week, all three or four of them fired me. Like I couldn't believe it. I literally couldn't believe it. I was like, how is this even possible? But it set me up for some other opportunities that I wouldn't have hadn't all of that not happened. So it like what you were saying there is seeing the positive in it because it's not like however bad it is right now, it's not the end. It's
Yeah.
just like it's something that you need to get through to get to the other side. And so being able to see that, which is the difficult thing, being able to see that is very important.
No, I think you're right. And like, we're not always like, we're not always thinking in that positive way, usually, right? So sometimes it takes us a while to see it. Like, I know for myself, and like, jobs are a great thing to look at for this, I think, because this is an experience a lot of people have, right? Like, I remember feeling so let down when I realized, like, the job that I'm in now, like, isn't going to pan out. Like, there's just no future in it and all. But then at the same time, like, that freed me up to start doing something I actually really wanted to do even more. So it's like, in the end, it's like a huge positive and a big bonus. Like, and I can see myself doing this and being happier long term than I could doing the other thing. So it's like, in the end, it's great, but at the time, it really hurt, because I felt like cheated. I felt like it was unfair, like blah, blah, all these things that I tell myself about it. When in reality, it was like, I'm glad to be finally relieved of it. And I feel much better now looking back. And like, but I think it's hard. It is so hard to stay that way. And I think, the Taoists, I think we're really right in the sense that, like, you know, we expect we build up all these expectations in our head for things to be regular, normal, secure, and we just like walk around the world like idiots, thinking like nothing will change, nothing will ever happen. I know everything. It's
Oh
great,
God.
right? And then there's
Yep.
always going to be things we don't expect. Like, if you think of it in the imagery of the river, right? There's always going to be like stray branches and logs coming down that river. If you don't get out of the way, you're going to get knocked out, right? And I think like going with that flow, you can expect the unexpected and just treat it as just another part of life. It doesn't have to be this big thing. It can just be, oh, okay, it's something that happened. All right, I changed course or I move over a little bit and then I get out of the way.
Hmm. Yeah, when you were talking about that, it reminded me of there's this movie called Thumbsucker with Keanu Reeves, and
Oh
in the
God, I haven't seen it forever.
I know, in the end of it, he gives some like he drops like a knowledge bomb, and he's this kid's dentist who sucks his thumb, and at the end of it, he says something along the lines of, we all want to have a life without problems, and you know that's that's not going to happen. But like the worst thing you can do is thinking you have the answer, thinking you have it figured out. And he's like, the secret is living without having an answer. I think, or it's something like that. And it's
Yeah, that
it's
makes sense.
crazy because like this one area that I thought this area of my life was like settled. I thought like I didn't have to worry about it. I was like this for the first time ever, like this is good. I thought I had the answer. I thought it was figured out, and like it just came and just boom, just like rocked me like a hurricane.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
that's just it though. It's like it's these stories we tell ourselves, right? Where we think we have the answers. We think we know truth. We think we know reality. And we're so positive about it that we fail to see all the other things. And I think it actually really makes us blind to other possibilities, other things that could even be better for us. It makes us contented, unwilling to change. It makes us, I think it really is detrimental. And the more you can be like open to the unexpected, open to the new, open to just life, I think life can be a lot more exciting, fun, and better overall. But it's not easy either. I'm not saying it's easy.
Mm-mm.
Don't want to say that because it's definitely not. It's hard at times. It
Yeah.
really is hard.
Yeah. So like I think another thing that was really helpful is that we read so many books. Like
Yeah,
you
it
and I
does
love
totally
to
help.
read. Dude,
Yeah.
and I don't even know how like it must have just been luck. But within the past 3 months, there were two books that I read that were just like so perfect for what I was going through. One was called It's Okay to Not Be Okay, and the other was called Loving What Is. And
Ah,
so
nice.
It's Okay, It's Not Okay was just about grieving. And this was something that I had to deal with recently was grieving. Because like as soon as you open up to somebody, tell them what happened, all I mean, in their own good nature, they want you to feel better. And that's
They
cool
want to
because
solve
they
the
care
problem.
about you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They
They
just want to
but
help.
like the thing
Yeah,
is, it's just gonna suck for a while. Like it's just gonna be
yeah.
painful. It's gonna feel really, really bad. And so, like, from that book, I got that, hey, you know what? It's cool that I'm feeling terrible for as long as I feel terrible. And then from the other book, Loving What Is, I mean, there were so many things that I got from that. But like one of the big things is that, suffering comes from attaching to a thought. And
Yeah.
generally it's a thought that argues with reality. And then yeah, I think that's the only one that I remember right now. But there's a whole bunch of other good stuff in that book too.
No, it's funny. It is really funny. It's like, I always tell myself and like it's just life. Stop making it more than it's out to be. You know what I mean? Like, and I know that sounds weird to say, but it's like it is just life. It's we get in our own way so much because we tell ourselves so many things, we convince ourselves so many things. It's like, it's like the person who like goes to work and like they work their ass off and like I'm gonna get a promotion because I deserve it, I shine, and then they get passed over because the boss's buddy also works there or something, and it's like, well,
Mhm.
you were never going to get that promotion anyway. It was never in the docket for you. Doesn't matter
Yep.
how hard you work, doesn't matter what you do. And I think it's just life. And I think if we start to recognize that and can be more open to like, changes, we can also be more responsive to these sort of curveballs in life and find a better route or dodge it, at least, and not get hit by it directly in the face.
Yeah. I also think there's a skill that comes with getting hit in the face over
Oh
and
yeah,
over again. So
totally.
like
Yeah.
this wasn't my first rodeo, and I gotta say, like so far, I'm handling it the best that I've ever handled anything like this in my life. And I'm quite impressed with, I would say, like I was journaling, I think the morning after, and I was just like, the mere fact that people can get through this is just like a testament to the resilience of humans. Like this is incredible
Yeah.
that somebody can get through this. And thinking that, if somebody else can do it, then I can do it too. And I've done it before and I'll do it again. And it's just like,
It's also not the last time, right? Like the unexpected's gonna happen. And like, you gotta deal with it. It's like, and I think no, I think you're right. I think looking back on times you've done it before is super helpful. But that's why experience is helpful. You were right in the beginning. I think when you're young, it feels like the end of the world. Because you've never gone like especially like if it's like I remember for instance, like when I was like I don't remember how old I was at the time anymore. It was like I think I was 14. When my parents got divorced, right? I feel like that felt like I knew it was coming, but the reality of it felt like very like how like really like now what's normal is not normal anymore completely, right, for a kid. But like as I got older, like first of all you understand adults better, but also like you go through more of it. But when you're young it feels like the whole like you've never had this kind of obstacle before or curveball, so it feels like everything crumbles. But then as you get older, like you realize no, there's always going to be things like this coming up, and it's you get stronger with each one, I think, if you deal with it in the right way.
mhm. Yeah. And there's also like, you remember that saying that like the amateur blames others,
Oh
the
yeah.
the skilled person blames himself, and then the master blames no one.
Yeah.
So that's what I was trying to do with this situation because like I so much wanted to blame the other person. And then I also so much wanted to blame myself. But when I took a look at it, I was like, we were both doing what we believed was right.
Yeah.
And like it's not what's best for them is none of my business, you know?
Yeah, in
But I'm
certain sense
trying to
it's
put
not.
yeah, I'm trying to put myself in their business. And so like I was looking at it like that, like we were both doing what we thought was best. And I'm
It's
not saying
also
I'm a
too,
master, but it just helped.
yeah, it does help. I think the other thing too is like to remind yourself it's okay to feel hurt. It's okay to feel, you know, maybe even like, I don't know, like hurt or like whatever, caught off guard or whatever. But like at the same time too, it's like, yeah, you got to look at the other perspective. And I think most people, whether it's, I mean, whether they're doing the right thing or not, like most people are trying to do what's best for them, or trying to do a good thing usually when they act. They're not trying to do something bad or they wouldn't do it. That doesn't make any sense. So it's like, I think remembering that can help a lot. And then just trying to see it from their perspective too. And like sometimes it opens up new avenues too, like maybe a new avenue for communication or a new way of understanding each other or something. You never know what'll come from it.
Hmm. Yeah. So another thing that I did that was super helpful. Oh, you were going to ask
Yeah.
something.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, this one is might catch a lot of people by surprise. But there was that one thing that we went over probably like a month or two ago, just for today. It's like a saying from
Oh,
Alcoholics
yeah,
Anonymous
yeah, yeah.
that like just for today I'll take this one day at a time. And then also like I always found the serenity prayer kind of like that's insightful. Like I'll have the serenity to accept the things I can't change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And so like I figured it would be good to have a group of people who were just interested in improving themselves. So I started going to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. Not that, not that I had really an alcohol problem, but I had a life problem and I needed a support group of people. And it's been like I've gone a few times and it's been like such a great time because I'm not alone in suffering. Like
No.
that's the coolest thing. It's like a group of
What?
people and everybody's suffering and they've all got different problems that maybe to me don't seem that big of a deal or maybe to me they are a huge deal, but like we're all just human and we're all going through stuff. And that's something that previous times that I've been uh having my world rocked, I was always so alone. Like I would stay in the house and not do anything. So this has been helpful.
You know what's funny about addiction is people always think it's like, like those groups or whatever, they always think it's that one thing. That's why they're there and like, bleh. And it's really not. Like addiction is just a means of handling things. So it's a, not a helpful means of handling things, but it is a way of handling things. Like, I mean, they always say like, what is it? I think it's the why me, like, oh, oh no, poor me, poor me, poor me, oh, poor me another, that saying kind of like, yeah, and it works for any addiction, where like, you run into obstacles in life and your solution is to instead face it head on. It's to go around it or just, get inebriated or whatever. And so I think it is help. You can go for that because it is helpful because it's all people that are just suffering, struggling with stuff, trying to get through it and trying to get through it without this crutch anymore. So I think, and that crutch could be anything. It doesn't have to be alcohol. It could be literally anything. And I think so that is very helpful. Yeah.
And dude, it's been, I mean, it may just be my experience here, but it's been like the friendliest group I've ever gone to.
Oh, yeah.
Because I've tried all types of groups,
Super
like all
non-judgmental.
types. Yeah, I
Like
know.
really, like yeah.
Yeah. I've tried all types of groups on Meetup. I've done all types of activities, athletics, yoga, all these different things. And everybody always comes with a chip on their shoulder. But you go there and they're just like, hey, we're all messed up.
Yeah,
How can we support each other? And it's
yeah.
great. Yeah.
It is nice though, because it's more humble, I think, and less like, because you go to yoga, I mean, all that kind of stuff. It's people trying to be better than everybody else, trying to be cooler than everybody
I'm more
else. And
spiritual than you.
yeah,
Like, oh,
literally,
that's tough.
it's so funny. Uh, I was gonna say, I mean, it's funny because I was just thinking of Plato's allegory of the cave, with the prisoner trapped in the cave, and I think like most of us are like that. And it's like if you go outside, it's like, oh my God, and it's like, or if the cave wall got knocked down, you'd panic and like your whole world would be destroyed. But I think it's better, like that's what it is about dealing with curveballs or like the unexpected is learning how to go outside of your comfort zone and still be yourself and not let it completely overwhelm you and not let it take over, right? Because that's usually what happens. Like you get angry, you get upset, something happens, you feel like somebody did something to you, and then like you lose yourself completely because your emotions, your anger, whatever, and you forget what even matters to you, in that moment. It's crazy. Like, I mean, we've all had that happen, right? Especially like I think personal relationships are a great example of that, where like you feel like somebody did something intentional to hurt you, and like it can totally make you forget all the good things about your relationship and all the positive things and just look at that one thing, and it can even destroy them, when it maybe it shouldn't have. And so I think, yeah, learning to look at them differently can be really helpful.
Yeah. And also with that, the feeling that you're not going to survive it, like getting outside your comfort zone, having an event that takes you by surprise like this, that's the first thing that happened to me. Like, I'm not going to survive this. That's the thought that came
Yeah.
to my head. And so like I've learned from that book, Loving What Is, to question my thoughts when they come up. And journaling is very helpful because I'm like, I write down the thoughts that I'm having, and then each one I question it. And can I know I won't survive it? Absolutely. Can I absolutely 100% know I won't survive it? No. So like, but like when I have that thought, I feel terrible. I feel like all
Yeah.
contracted. I feel sick to my stomach. I just have my mind is racing. I'm in panic mode. And it's like, well, without that thought, how would I be? And I'd just be like, okay, I'm here and I'm hurting. That's cool. That's what it is. I'm like,
It's
I'm that part in the movie. I'm that sad part in the movie that everybody pays $20 to go see because
yeah.
they're like, oh, they're sad. Oh, I could feel
Yeah.
sad too. And it's like, I'm there. That's it. Yeah. Go
It's
on.
that catharsis, right?
Yeah.
You get to,
Hmm.
you get to experience the emotion without going through it. Exactly. No, I was laughing because like it's so stupidly simple, right? Like write down what you're feeling and question it, self-reflection. But like we never do it. And it's like the thing happens, and instead of like immediately asking ourselves, like, why do I feel this way? What's really wrong? What really, because like a lot of times too, that's the funny thing. Like when there's a curveball, like it's not our anger and we're upset about something that's misdirected. Like it's not even the thing that's really the problem. It's usually something else beyond it, right? And I think like it's funny because we fail to see that when we don't reflect on it. But most people don't reflect at all. They just immediately go right for, and it does. I think it does get easier with time. I don't want to make it seem like, I was ever always good at this or anything or still am. Like I think it's just something that takes time. And it's like
Yeah.
it's a lot easier to help. It's even funny, even when stuff that helps like you said earlier, you know, like when stuff happens to other people that I know, like you want to help. So you try to offer advice that's helpful. And a lot of times sometimes that's not even necessary. Like they don't need advice. They just need, to know life sucks
Hmm.
sometimes and it's okay. You'll get through it.
Yeah. And that happened with someone that I was talking to. They were being very, very helpful, but they were just talking and talking and talking, and I really just wanted to have the catharsis of just getting it off my chest. And so I said to them, "Can you just listen to me for 5 minutes? Because I just really need to say this stuff." And they were like, "Yeah." And it was really good to be able to recognize that I didn't need it at that moment. I didn't need a solution. I just
Yeah.
needed
Yeah.
to I just needed to be heard. And they were great enough to be able to do that for me.
I still do that all the time with Anna because I don't like seeing her upset, so I try and fix it. And she's like, she doesn't want it to be fixed. You know what I mean? But like, I feel
Yeah.
like I don't want her to feel upset, so like, I immediately try and come up with many solutions again. And it's like, and I have to like stop myself, like physically, like be like, don't do that. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
like, because I
Yeah.
know it's frustrating, but it's not from a place of like trying to make the person upset. It's just
Yeah.
coming from a place of trying to make it better.
Yeah, it's coming
Which
from
I
a
think,
place of love.
yeah.
Because we don't want to see other people hurting because we know what it's like to hurt and it sucks.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
sucks. It's
Yeah.
so
But I
funny
mean,
too, like, yeah.
go on.
Oh, I was gonna say it's so funny too that like, it's so often so like well, like we've said all the time, like I'm so thankful that we do this every week because it's like so funny that like I don't know anybody else who does this. Like no, I mean not necessarily record it, but just even like meet up with that's a step. But we were not recording it before though. Like I mean meeting up every week and just chatting about whatever's going on. Like because I think most people don't have that outlet. And like
Mm,
if you have that, it's like so empowering because it gives you somebody else that's exactly like that's there for you all the time. But it also like just gives you a way to constantly kind of just think about what's going on in your life and actually address it. You
yeah.
know?
That's a great point. It's so easy to get stuck in your problems when you're doing it by yourself because you think everybody else has got it all figured out and you're the only one who's messed up.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
and then once you're able to talk with someone else who's going through stuff and you're like, "Oh, they have problems too. Oh my goodness, I'm not alone
Yeah.
here."
Yeah.
All of a sudden you're like, "Oh, I'm just human. This is great."
Yeah. Well, that's the funny thing. It's like, even like all these people we idolize and stuff, like, they all have fucking problems too. And I'm sure like they all have problems every week. They have things they struggle with. They get jaded, they get upset. All these things happen to them. They have curveballs. It's just you just don't see it because they have PR teams or they have this and that helping them navigate the world, at least from the front facing part of it, right? So that, you don't see what's in the background. You don't see all the things they went through. You don't see all the struggles. And like, it's so easy to look outside of ourselves and imagine other people's lives ideally until you actually talk to them and realize what they're going through, realize why they made the decisions they made, understand the situation. I mean, it's really, I forget what it was. What was I listening to? There, it was like, I forget what the hell it was at this point, but like, they're talking about how like, groups of people that generally don't agree, like, or that like see each other very differently, like if they meet somebody and actually talk to them of the other outside group, they realize they're a person, and it like totally messes everything up because now they're not dealing with, some external weird entity. They're dealing with another human being, and it totally screws up everything because now they can no longer think that way. It's
Mhm.
like, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that's why traveling is pretty important so you can meet different people, different cultures. Because I'm always blown away by like the crazy things that people think about other people. And it's like, I've traveled to 35 different countries and everybody,
it's the same.
everybody wants pleasure and avoids pain. Everybody
Yeah,
wants the good life and wants to stay away from the bad life. Like that's basically all the people are.
yeah. I remember when I first started traveling, that was the first thing I realized. It's like you're just trying to do the best you can. But yeah, that's it.
Hmm.
Like, nothing else.
Yeah, and I always thought I mean, I remember before I knew how to speak other languages, I thought, "Oh, French is such a sexy language." And then and
Till
then
you
I
meet the
learned how to
French.
and then I learned how to speak yeah, and then I learned how to speak it and literally the people are just talking about, "Oh, did you eat yet?" "Yeah, I went out and ate." "Did you eat yet?" "Oh, I went out." And I was like, "Man, that ruined that."
Yeah, isn't that funny how different it sounds when you're not uh like familiar with what's actually being, because it is just normal conversation. It's not anything special. It does
Hmm.
sound, I mean, it does. It is a nice sounding language sometimes, but yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. So, here's another thing. We talk a lot about habits and like creating good habits. And that has been so important during this during this, week of turmoil is having the habits to rely on because I didn't always have good habits and I would wait until something went really bad to start trying to do something good with my life. And so like but actually having because for probably years now I've had these and I'm always adding more to them, but I've always had these like or changing them. But I've had these habits that make my life better, that make me feel better, that help me with dealing with things. And so that's just been like a regular type of thing. And so now when I'm going through struggle, instead of starting from zero, I can just do my habits a little bit more. Like I noticed this week, I'm doing the Wim Hof breathing 2 times a day instead of once a day. I'm going to the gym twice a day instead of once a day to wear myself out so I can sleep at night. And
Yeah.
and so it's like, but it's like these things that historically I wouldn't have been doing. Now they've already been done, like they're already a part of my life. I'm already doing them anyways. They're helping me out anyways, and now I just get to amp them up a little bit when I'm in a time of trouble.
Yeah, it's something I wish I realized when I was younger, which is like that's what the value in have, like they're valuable in themselves for various reasons because they help you in a lot of ways. But like especially when things are hard, it's like an anchor. It's like something that like, okay, yeah, today's gonna be difficult, but I know I gotta do this. I know I gotta do this. I can do this more than once if I need. Like you just do what you have to, to like get through, but it gives you like a starting point or like a baseline so that things aren't all messed up. Because I think the biggest thing too, like when we get like curveballs make us feel like things are out of control, or it makes us realize that we have no control on reality, the reality we thought we controlled. And like having those habits already put in place, it gives you that sense of control to kind of get through it. You know, like I used to remember whenever I was stressed with work in undergrad, I would always clean my room first before I started doing anything because it made me feel like I was in control. I'd have a nice clean room and then I'd sit down and then I work on it, and it relieved some stress. Like some part of me, it helped. Like I made me feel better about it, and like I never really thought about it till much later in life. how I did that all the time, but it was a really helpful thing because it just made me feel like, okay, this area is controlled. I'm good. I can now do this, you know?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is good. Um, yeah, so I think, when life throws you a curveball, make lemonade. It's,
Yeah.
it's just like I guess like acceptance is a big thing too, because it's just like almost all of my suffering is due to me arguing with reality.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Always.
so and so just like like being able to accept it and working
You
on
know,
that because it's something that, I'll accept it one moment and then, an hour later I'm bargaining with the universe to change it.
yeah,
So like it's a process, but yeah.
it all is, right? I think acceptance too, and also realizing that like it's not the end. There's always new paths. As long as you're open to them, there's always new paths, new possibilities. And that's what's like, that's one of the things I always loved about the existentialists is like life is just possibility. It's inexhaustible possibilities. We can make it whatever we want. And if you realize that, like no obstacle is too great because there's always a way around it. There's always another path. There's always a way forward, right? And so accepting it, but realizing that there's alternatives. And maybe we're not looking at it correctly. So challenging our own story that we're telling ourselves, asking questions, self-reflecting is like such an important thing to do in those moments too, because it helps you see, I think, clearly, like also to identify the problem. Because I think a lot of times when this happens to me too, I feel like I lose control and I don't know what the problem is anyway. I focus on the wrong thing, and it's like sometimes you identify it too late, you know?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So, I guess it comes down to like being kind with yourself, relying on
Yeah.
your support group for a little bit of help when you need it.
Don't expect
Hmm.
things not to change because they'll change.
Hmm.
You know?
Yeah, and it takes time. Like that's one of the oh, I sent you that patience quote by Gary
Yeah.
Vaynerchuk.
Yeah.
He always talks about patience all the
It's a
time.
good one.
And it is so important. He's like the reason I'm patient is because I'm not uh something along the lines of I don't have to compare myself to anyone else but me, and I've got my whole life to do that. And
Yeah.
it he always talks about patience, and I struggle with patience on a regular basis. And it's just like we think we have to do so much stuff and everything has to happen now. But it's just like if you look at nature, and I know we forget we're part of nature, but if you look at nature, it
Constantly.
all takes time. It all has its seasons. It's just like it's very, very slow. And I think we get taken outside of that in the modern life where, you're doing a million different things, you're running all over the place, you never have a moment to yourself. And it's just like if we can just slow down and be patient, that would probably help us a lot.
No, I think that's a good one too. Just like, it's like so often we have these ideas of what we want and we want it to happen right now because we dream about it, we think about it, right? So we imagine the world where that's the case and we imagine it's much better. So we want it right now and then we get frustrated when it doesn't happen right now. But the reality is like it's gonna take time. Like you said, like it's not nothing happens immediately. So just sit with it and deal with it. It's okay. I also
Hmm.
think one last thing I would add too is like try your best to see the positive because the negative does not help anything. Like nothing. Zero. It just makes you
Hmm.
angrier. Don't make a pity party for yourself. Try to like look at how can I overcome this? How can I change this? What am I looking at wrong? Or what's good about this? What does this open up for me now as a new thing? Or does it strengthen me? Does it make me stronger? Does it offer me opportunities to change something I wanted to change? Who knows?
Hmm. That's a great point. And using negative thinking as a trigger to think positively, because
Yeah.
negative thinking happens automatically. But if you can catch yourself having a negative thought and be like, okay, what's one positive thought? What's two positive thoughts? Because generally, all sometimes it'll become a chain. I mean, when you're in the thick of things, it won't. But like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it can start to get that way. And using the negative thoughts as a trigger. I was doing that earlier today, where I was just having like negative thoughts, and I was like, okay, what are the positive thoughts? And because, like I said, the negative thoughts are going to happen. So you might as well use what's going to happen to
Yeah.
trigger you to do the thing that's going to help you.
Yeah, you know what helps me too is sometimes like when a curveball really does happen too, is asking myself like, well, what's the universe trying to tell me? Because sometimes it's a helpful way to kind of maybe start thinking, like it's like whether I believe it or not, it's a helpful way to start thinking positively, like right, like this thing happens, so maybe the world's trying to tell me something else, like maybe I should be doing something else, going in a different direction, and that can be really valuable too, you know,
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
flip your
So
perspective. Yeah,
there in a nutshell, you have everything's in a nutshell. There in a nutshell, you have uh when life hands you lemons and throws you a curveball and smacks you upside the head, you know, some suggestions, maybe some perspective. It's yeah, having perspective is good on these situations, and it's
we're
just one
not
of those
perfect,
things.
you know.
Sometimes, yeah, and sometimes you just have to get through it. Like that's a I have like a motivation playlist on my phone of all these motivation videos on YouTube. And I listen to them regularly to give me motivation, but when I when I'm feeling down and I listen to them, oh my goodness, like they impact me a lot. And like one of the things I think it was Eric Thomas, the hip hop preacher, he was talking about how sometimes you just have to get through it. Like that's
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And I was listening to that and I was like, wow, maybe that's it. Maybe I just have to get through it. Like, and that gave me,
Sometimes that's all you have to do, literally, is just get through it. Literally, that's
I
it, you
know.
know, like, nothing
And like
else.
simple as it sounds, that gave me hope because I was like, all right, I just got to get through it. Like I just have to endure this. That's it.
You know, it's funny too. It's like it makes it so much simpler too, because it's like half the time we're just fighting with reality and making it so much worse when we still have to do the thing anyway. So if you just get through it, it's a lot less of a burden, and then you're beyond it and you move on to the next thing.
Hmm. Yeah, you don't
Yeah.
have to figure out your whole life right now. You don't have to
Nope.
solve every problem right now. All you have to do is get through today. That's it.
Mm,
And just get through this one thing that you're doing. That's it.
mm. Even if you figure it out anyway, something will change, mess it up
Hmm.
later.
Yep. Cool. So that's a great place to end it. This is when life hands you a curveball or throws you a lemon. This is the Existential Stoic Podcast. I'm Randy. That's Danny. Make sure to check us out on YouTube. I keep messing this up with introducing us, but
I
make sure
know.
to check us
It's
out
all
on
right.
YouTube and the podcasting services. And yeah, again, I'm Randy. That's Danny. I'll see you later, Danny.
Later, Andy.